Good morning to former Commissioner Captain Gary Griffith. Former Commissioner Griffith, there's a lot to speak about on the issue of crime fighting and the recent developments in Trinidad and Tobago. But let's talk about this new name or reference that has been given to you by Minister of National Security. Fitzgerald Hines went into Parliament and called you on the issue of the firearm user license matter an untrustworthy wimp. What are your thoughts on that accolade?
Well, there's very little to think as it pertains to anything that comes out of the mouth of Fitzgerald Hines. He has proven to be the most ineffective, the biggest failure in the history of Trinidad and Tobago as any minister whatsoever. And just by Keith Rowley keeping him as a minister, it shows the standard of Keith Rowley and his government. Just looking at the meaning of the word wimp, a wimp is a weak person, a wimp is a coward. When you compare my track record of being the first Trinidad and Tobago citizen that got a United Nations peacekeeping medal, being the youngest military officer to defend democracy in the attempted coup, being the commissioner of police, that was the first time you would have seen in decades someone standing up to take on gangs. And you compare that to an individual who runs like a coward when somebody kicks water in them. He needs to understand the meaning of the word wimp. As it pertains to untrustworthy, this sums up what the PNM thinks. The PNM believes that unless you worship and you adhere and bow to everything that the PNM does, and you must make sure that you must say and do only what is of benefit to the PNM, you are considered untrustworthy. And that shows that these individuals, these crowds, do not understand their role and function or their oath in office. So it basically sums up the character of Fitzgerald Hines.
Now, in speaking of Fitzgerald Hines and speaking of national security, the issue of human trafficking has been an ongoing discussion for the past weekend into this week. You have where Rodney Charles would have asked the Prime Minister about that human trafficking report. The Prime Minister responded accordingly and pointed fingers back into the direction of the UNC. Devant Maharaj, your former cabinet colleague, jumps into the mix. What are your thoughts on this entire conversation thus far on the issue of human trafficking?
I think it sums up the status of politics in Trinidad and Tobago. Again, instead of politicians doing the job, there's a reason. I think you would have seen a video with the DJs for Carnival praising me, commending me, thanking me, asking me to return. There's a reason why I have that type of national support that is probably arguably more than Keith Rowley himself. And the reason for that is if it is you just serve people and you do the right thing and you try to be productive, people, you will get the votes, you will get the support. So Keith Rowley actually thought that by me not being commissioner of police, I will lose that national support. And the point I'm trying to get is that what we're seeing now in the situation with human trafficking and the debate, all you're getting is those persons who hold office, instead of just getting the job done, instead they see it fit to point fingers. That has been the mantra for this government for the last 8 years. They've spent more time basically saying, look, we know we are incompetent, we cannot perform, but them thief, they are this, they are that, they are the other. They have spent more time speaking about the opposition than just getting the job done. As the Minister of National Security, I saw the difference. I realized, look, I am not here to play politics. I'm not here to be spending time attacking the PNM whilst they were in opposition. I got the job done. And that is the problem here, because we are speaking about human trafficking, a very serious matter, and this government has failed miserably. In 2013 to 2015, where it so happened when I was the Minister of National Security, we were upgraded by, as it pertained to human trafficking, because the grade is from Tier 3, which is one of the lowest grades you could get, to Tier 2 watch lists, to Tier 2, to then Tier 1. So Tier 2 watch list to Tier 2 is like a B minus to a B. We were on Tier 2 watch list. I pumped dozens of policies based on the recommendations by the US government, and it involved from the establishment of the Child Protection Unit, strengthening of the counter-trafficking unit, providing documentation of statements for foreign victims, dealing with temporary immigration relief to victims, partnering with NGOs, funding NGOs, investigating over 20 cases. It was so many things, provision of, I'm just drawing through in the back of my mind, reigniting security cooperation agreements with Venezuela and Colombia. what I did and what the government, that then government did in 1 year, the PNM have been unable to do in 8 years. In that period, we were upgraded from tier 2 watch list to tier 2, and we were commended by the US government for the type of job that we were doing to deal with human trafficking. As soon as I left and the People's Partnership left, 8 years later, we were downgraded back to tier 2 watch list because of the incompetence of three ministers of national security in Eddie Dillon, Stuart Young, and Fitzgerald Pines, and then you're looking at us being downgraded. They have done nothing. All they have done is make excuses, and then on top of that, now trying to blame the UNC or blame the opposition because there's a rumor that somebody may have been involved in human trafficking. That sums up why we are feeling as a country, why this government is feeling, because they spend more time pointing fingers instead of trying to accept the fact that why is it that when Gary Griffith was Minister of National Security, when the People's Partnership were in government, we were upgraded, we were commended, we did dozens of things that pleased the US government, that allowed us to be upgraded. But then when you get in government, we get downgraded and you are unable to deal with the problem of human trafficking. That is the problem. Politicians spending more time to attack their political opponents than trying to deal with the issues to serve the country.
You've outlined a number of measures that you took while minister and measures you took while commissioner of police to deal with the issue of human trafficking. The report that has become the subject of national conversation is one of the U.S. Department of State. It was published on the 19th of July 2022, if I've gotten the date right. That was after you became commissioner of police. The report would have spoken about a number of developments prior, and it refers to senior government officials being involved in trafficking. There's a finger pointing game now, Mr. Griffith, Captain Griffith. People are talking about the PNM, people are talking about the UNC, and people are wondering, whom are these persons involved? Have you ever been given information, or have you ever been given an idea as to which direction the authorities or law enforcement should be looking when it comes to the issue of human trafficking in this country?
Yeah, definitely. So what the US will do is that they will have intelligence, not reports of confirmation, because if there's confirmation, then persons will be arrested and charged. So they will have information that will come to their table, and the same way they will send travel advisories to say that there's massive crime and kidnapping taking place in Port of Spain. You now need to make sure you do the research and then go to the US embassy to say, listen, this is inaccurate. We have done the research, and that is why we had travel advisories as well in that period that would have been improving. So the US will get information, whether it is based on hearsay, rumshop talk, intelligence gathering from their intelligence agencies, and they will put it in their report. It is for the government now to ascertain, well, I should say the police, to ascertain whether it is a fact or fiction. And that I can tell you, as the Minister of National Security, up until almost the end of the reign of the People's Partnership, at no time did I receive any such information on either government or opposition, PNM or UNC, of anyone involved in human trafficking. As the Commissioner of Police from 2018 to 2021, at no time any such information came to my desk for any investigation to take place pertaining to any member of government or opposition involved in human trafficking. And that is what this government should have done. But they deliberately sat on it. The police now, when they got that, Mr. McDonald Jacob, instead of getting that report, reading it, and then doing a thorough investigation to then come up to say we are now have a person of interest, or this is untrue, it was just a rumor, the police sat on it for almost 8 months. The government did not do anything because this is of value to the government. The government got excited with this to point fingers and say, aha, we catch them. And then the UNC obviously will do the same thing because the UNC is saying, no, it's the same government official, so it's you all. And we are being a laughing stock of international agencies that have a concern about human trafficking because we are seeing politicians pointing fingers at it is you, no, it is you, instead of us dealing with the issues when the last time we saw such action would have been under my watch as Minister of National Security. So I can emphatically state that at no time any such official report ever came to me to state that someone was involved in human trafficking. Now, there is a difference with human trafficking or if individuals are involved in some degree of escort service, prostitution, or whatever. That also, however, is a crime. And things may have come to my attention as a Minister of National Security of persons who may be related to the government that may have been involved in some type of questionable, unethical activity, which obviously would be a crime. But again, rumor and rumshop talk cannot take anyone anywhere. If you notice, this situation that is circling around, nobody is calling a name because it is easy for you to smear people, but you can't, if you call a name, you better be able to come up with the information. This here is identical to what the PNM did with the audit report as it pertains to firearms. They know they cannot call names, they know they cannot say outside because they will be sued. So they're running like little wimps, untrustworthy wimps, to go into parliament in the hope that they could smear persons' names, because that is where you can destroy persons' character to your benefit and not be sued. So that situation is the same thing. If this is so damning, if this is so confirmed, why it is that the individuals who are making these accusations, especially the government, why are they calling names of the persons outside of parliament? That is what I would have done as a minister. If I was so sure that this was taking place and this was confirmed, I would not call the names outside parliament. If you are unable to do so, then you are indeed an untrustworthy wimp, because what you're doing is using hearsay and a rumor based on a report as an avenue to discredit your political opponents.
Are you calling the Prime Minister an untrustworthy wimp this morning?
Well, definitely, because he is also acting as one. Because if he is so sure that the government did not do this and he believes it is somebody in the opposition, why doesn't he come out of parliament and call the name? It continues to show the weakness, the wimps that they have in the PNM, where they would like to hide in parliament to smear person's character and try to discredit them because they know that is where they cannot get sued. The audit report is the most blatant of that. It is only in a banana republic, in a dictatorial country, that politicians could hire persons, pay them big money, and then have them do a report and then say, well, let us go to parliament to spread the lies of the report without even speaking to the persons you have in the report to try to discredit them. That is all the PNM are good for, to try to character assassinate persons, destroy their character, in the hope that it will get them to win an election. So in this situation, as I said, if the Prime Minister is so certain that this has happened by the opposition, well then call the name of the individual that they believe or they are sure that has been involved in it. They cannot do it. Nobody could call names because they are fully aware that there will be legal action taken, because he who will make the accusation must prove.
You've made several comments in your statements. One of the comments is separating the issue of human trafficking from escort and prostitution services. We'll get to that. But in terms of calling names, one of your former cabinet colleagues, Devan Maharaj, he has not called names, but he has certainly pointed the country into the direction of the former UNC government and members of that government. And Devan Maharaj has said that when he was a minister, he knew of a human trafficking ring involving senior UNC members. You were a former member of that administration. What are some of your thoughts on Devan Maharaj's finger pointing?
Well, I would advise him he needs to tread carefully, because when you make these confirmed statements, if I was a commissioner of police, the first thing I would have done is to contact our dignitaries in Canada, have immediate contact with him, liaise with the Canadian police authorities to have a statement by Mr. Maharaj so that we can have that report in Trinidad and take decisive action to have these persons arrested. So that's the first thing. That I do not, this police service, they may not be as proactive as I was, but that is common sense. If someone has confirmed that they know that a crime has taken place, you go to that individual and get a statement to arrest the individuals. Because again, as you notice, Mr. Maharaj has not called names, but if he has stated that he knows for a fact that there was human trafficking, that means that there's a serious law that was broken, and it is now for the police to get that information. But as I am saying, there is no fact. What he would have probably received is the same information I would have received, which is rumors or intelligence that there was a certain type of unethical activity that may have taken place, and I myself would have been concerned. And we would expect that with these things, you will do a thorough investigation, probably internally, or more so, have the police do so. And if the police do not have evidence, they do not have witnesses, they do not have statements, it is going to be very difficult. Which comes to my point. The problem with human trafficking is a very difficult nut to crack. Even when I was commissioner of police, I was able to rescue 63 persons who were in cages. Listen to this, in cages, 6 foot by 6 foot, in shackles. We found tasers, which meant that they were probably using this to torture these individuals. And I was instead of me being commended and thanked by the general public, I was questioned and criticized by persons to say I'm fast and out of place to have gone into that place. And they were trying to, and they spend more time, the Express spend more time trying to state that that is not trafficking, because they are so clueless. They do not understand the meaning of the word trafficking. Trafficking does not necessarily and only mean sexual exploitation of women. It can also mean trying to have someone held against their will for financial benefit. And it shows the ignorance of persons in understanding human trafficking. So when this happens, however, as it pertains to raids, I made a number of raids. I led the raids as it pertains to the concern I also had as it had to do with prostitution, especially that of minors, especially that of persons who may be here illegally, because that is where you move the battle from prostitution to human trafficking, because now you have young girls underage held against their will or being influenced to be told that you have to do this on a nightly basis, otherwise we'll report you to the authorities for told that you will be sent back to your country, which they prefer not to. And then when we were making all of these raids, you will be seeing all these elderly men stating that, well, no, I was just here in the wrong place at the wrong time, lying by the bar. The girls who are scantily clad with see-through clothes on by a pool will say, no, I was just having a drink and I fell in the pool. So very few persons want to come forward and give evidence. So every single time we made these raids, persons would be released, and it is very unfortunate because these young girls will continue to be used and abused. One of the things I was trying to do to put an end to it, because we have over 73 bars and clubs that are used as a front for prostitution and human trafficking. And my concept is to shut it down by revoking the bar license and not having it renewed when it comes up in the court. That is what I was doing. Thankfully, thanks to Christopher Rowley, I'm no longer commissioner of police, so that plan has now shut down, because it would have been by 2020, early 2022, with the bar licenses coming up for renewal, all of these brothels would have been shut down, and that would have been a positive sign to reduce human trafficking. But thanks to Keith Rowley and his pettiness, being an untrustworthy wimp, he decided to say that he didn't want Gary Griffith as commissioner of police, and the country is now paying the price where human trafficking has now escalated, as you would have seen. With, as I said, under my watch, we were upgraded, and after I left, we have been downgraded, and it has remained that way.
You've been giving us some little peeks into, or some reminders, I should say, into the things you've had to deal with when it comes to human trafficking. I'll get to that in just a bit. Captain Griffith, you spoke a lot about intelligence, and you spoke a lot about information coming to you. I'd like to ask you very pointedly, and maybe you're in a position to respond or not. Did any of the intelligence that you received at that point in time point into the direction of current or former members of parliament?
I do not want to, you see, by me doing that now, it will start to box into the situation of pinpointing one of 41 persons. I would prefer not to at this time. What I can state is that at the time, there was no person who was a member of parliament. However, the persons held office that would have been closely related to our government, whether it be affiliation to a state board or whatever. But I can't say it. There was a concern. There were reports that would have come to my attention as the Minister of National Security. And unlike the PNM, as a minister, and that's why when I'm hearing Devon Mirage, who's a good friend of mine, I'm hearing what he has to say when he stated that Kamala said to launch an investigation. I shudder to think that Kamala Prasad-Bissessar was trying to keep Rowley herself as a prime minister, because Keith Rowley is the only joker that I have ever seen as a prime minister who feels he has operational and investigative authority. That is what he does. If you notice, his comments have always been to launch an investigation, whether it is in Stanley John, the Barrington, the audit report. Any single time something happens that is going to lead to the demise or something negative to the PNM, he decides to launch an investigation. Dear Keith Rowley, understand your role and function. As the chair of the National Security Council, you do not have operational or law enforcement or investigative authority. That lies in the hands of the police. So when you form these audits, or you hire Barrington or Stanley John, or these four jokers who he put as persons to do an audit who are civilians, you can't do that for an investigation. So when I heard that Kamala Prasad had said to launch an investigation and use ministers, I can't understand how she would have done this. And I, as the Minister of National Security, was not part of the so-called investigation. And further, as I said, ministers have no capability or authority to be involved in investigations, especially as it pertains to criminal activity. That lies in the hands of the police. So I would have received rumors, hearsay, and the police would have continued their investigation based on such intelligence. But this is, as I said, goes back to my point. It becomes very difficult if you don't have witnesses, you don't have data, you don't have video footage, you don't have statements, and that means it becomes something where you're aware of something that is taking place, but it is difficult for you to pinpoint it and target the perpetrator because of the inability to get the evidence. And that's where there's always a difficulty between intelligence being turned to evidence to be able to charge those persons.
Let's talk about the scale of human trafficking in this country. You referred to a couple of incidents in which you had to intervene. With all of this talk about human trafficking, this and human trafficking that, what is your understanding of the scale or extent of human trafficking? We see where there are several boats still coming to Venezuela, and from time to time we hear stories of young Trinidadian women going missing. Does this have anything to do with this conversation on human trafficking?
Well, as it pertains to missing persons, we have very little information to link that with human trafficking. It can be based on perception. There's a possibility that woman may have left here. But the thing is, if the reason why I personally will think that this is not true or very little, if a Trinidad and Tobago citizen wants to migrate to be and that they're being lured based on something, they are not going to, it is very difficult to believe that they're going to migrate to South America. They will do it more in North America, and they will do it through a legitimate port of entry. So you will, if the number of persons that we have missing, you will have it recorded that they would have left our ports or shores through a legitimate port of entry, because that is what usually happens. In human trafficking, many persons are lured to say, come to this country and we have a good job for you as an accountant, as a housekeeper, or whatever. And then when you get there, you're put in the most atrocious conditions, and then you're being told, we are holding your passports. If you don't agree, we are going to report you to the authorities. And then there's a strong problem as it pertains to the person that will be being blackmailed, because they come now, they provide you with a home, they provide you with transportation, they provide you with a meal, and sometimes it is 2 times the amount of what you're getting in your income. So now they hold you to ransom by saying, now you owe us, and that is virtual slavery that takes place. And these are the things that the government should be dealing with, not spending their time pointing fingers and blaming the opposition. And that is my point. So, but there are many avenues as it pertains to human trafficking. We believe it is just sexual exploitation, it is immune, but there are other avenues. We have situations in this country where we have 120,000 persons who are here illegally. And when I say illegally, I'm speaking about persons from different parts, especially CARICOM and South America, where they come through the legitimate ports of entry, and through the legitimate ports of entry, they do not return. It means that they're here illegally, which means that on most occasions they must have an income, a source of living. And then you will have many employers. And again, when I did this, I stepped on many toes as the Minister of National Security, because yet again, as I did with my fast self as commissioner, I was stepping on big business, and people were very hesitant that who do you feel you are? So when you have a big businessman hiring, whether it is Filipinos, persons from Latin America, whatever, you pay them below the minimum wage. You are not providing them with what they're entitled to. They're not giving them overtime. You then pay, and then after you try to provide them with accommodation, and then with that accommodation, it is now increasing the cost of what they're indebted to. That is also human trafficking, because now you're telling the person, well, you owe me and you can't leave unless you pay. And if it is you object, I am going to report you to the authorities because you have overstayed your time. If look at the number I just spoke about. We are speaking about almost 20% of the adult population in Trinidad and Tobago are here illegally. And the majority of it would have been Venezuelans, Colombians, persons in CARICOM, persons from Africa. And with that, it shows the serious problem we have. I was dealing with the problem as the Minister of National Security when I stated that if we have 20% of the adult population here illegally, there's a very good chance that most of these people must work. And if they're working, it means that they can't be registered, they can't get NIS, they can't get PAYE, they can't get workman compensation. And it means that employers could abuse the process. All of this is human trafficking. So let us not feel that human trafficking is simply a Venezuelan girl who is a prostitute and is being abused by a pimp. It is much more than that. And that is where this government, because of their irresponsibility, operating like untrustworthy wimps in trying to serve this country properly, have not dealt with a very serious problem. As I said, as the Minister of National Security, we started cracking it. We were dealing with it. It's not just, and it is not just about dealing with human trafficking. Even with the United Kingdom, so the US gave me a mandate as the minister, and I was able to deal with it to get us upgraded, and we were commended. The United Kingdom gave me the same situation where up until January 2015, early in 2014, they stated that UK visas were going to be imposed on every Trinidad citizen entering the UK. And there were 7 countries, and they said it is a done deal. I pleaded with them. I traveled to the United Kingdom, asked what it is that we are doing wrong. They gave me a list of 10 things that must be implemented, and they said it is impossible to get those implemented by January 2015. It involved putting canines at the airport. It involved dealing with all sorts of different things that were causing human trafficking, illegal immigrants entering Gatwick, not returning, drugs entering Gatwick through Trinidad and Tobago's port of entry. And we were able to crack it. And because of that, thankfully, and this country is not aware of many things that we would have achieved, it is because of what we did that ensured that the UK government did not impose visas on Trinidad and Tobago citizens. That is how a government operates. You go there and you serve, you deal with the problem. You don't point fingers at the opposition, because when you do that, then you become an untrustworthy wimp to serve any country.
As we end our time with you this morning, there's one more matter that I'd like to get your view on. The Commissioner of Police, Christopher, has said that there will be a drop in murders by June. I'm not too sure what she's basing this on. On one hand, it inspires some hope that we will be able to deal with crime, especially that we have hit 104 murders compared to 92 for last year. And there are some people who are not as hopeful. They are very skeptical about this for a number of reasons. What are your thoughts on her promise of a drop in murders by June?
Well, you can't give lip service, but the thing, I would hope that each and every law-abiding citizen of this country would hope that Ola Christopher would succeed. I would hope that every law-abiding citizen in this country would hope that the government can succeed. But hope can only take you so far. What Ola Christopher can do, it can be achieved. It is not difficult. Going right back to my last year in office, from August 2020 to August 2021, there were 342 murders. It was the lowest number of murders since 2004, almost 20 years. It was the highest reduction in every violent crime. As soon as I left, and McDonald Jacob decided to pull the plug on 100 plus policies, fire critical persons that were instrumental, especially as it pertained to technology and so forth, to reduce crime. We moved from the highest reduction in violent crime to the highest spike in violent crime in our country's history. So all Ola Christopher really needs to do is to reignite, put back in unfortunately, that comment will only be lip service. If she decides to not be cosmetic and do what she really believes, all you have to do, it was there. It is a template. It is simple to be reignited, because that, what was done there, caused the highest increase in public trust and confidence in the police service, from 14% in 2018 to 55% in 2021. Sadly, it has probably gone back down to 14. That is what is going to cause a major reduction in violent crime, because it will peg back the criminal elements. So I will continue to give her the support if she requires, but one thing I'm sure, she can't do worse than McDonald Jacob.
On that note, Captain Griffith, I want to thank you very much for your thoughts on these various matters, and we look forward to our next conversation with you on these critical issues.
My pleasure. Take care.